Hello, I'm Hal Ottaway with the Wichita Postcard Club, and it's time once again for a postcard of the week. And this week we're going all the way to Bentonville, Arkansas, and visiting with John and Joyce Jones, who live there and will be coming
Well,
to our postcard show here on October 21 and 22. It's not that far away, so be marking your calendar and watching for it. John is the son, and Joyce is the daughter in law of Bert and Bessie Jones, who were the founders of our Wichita Postcard Club. And so we're lucky to have them and lucky to hear a little bit about the history of the Jones family. And I think I'll let John tell about his folks right now.
hello, this is John and Joyce Jones. We want to talk about our interest in postcards. I'm sure there's a lot of other fellows that are collectors that are always wanting to find something new to collect or history of the ones that they do have. That's what we appreciate in the postcards is that you can just collect cards or you can get involved and do a lot of research and history on the background of where these cards were developed and printed. And there's a lot of research you can find on the internet or through books. And now Hal is a real knowledgeable person on a lot of these fields. And we really appreciate Hal's knowledge and encouragement for new collectors as well as old collectors. And we appreciate him through the years. For 45 years, he's worked for many hard hours to organize all this club activity, all the shows that we've been presented to, and we really appreciate him and his interest in following and encouraging collectors of postcards.
Thank you.
Um, my story begins with my dad. Uh, As a child, we collected a lot of stamps. I was in the scouting at the time, and you had to have certain things that you did, and you get a badge for it. So he decided that stamp collecting would be something of interest, that I could do historical things and also know more about the world as far as different countries. So he bought several different albums, and then we got approvals that we sent off for. We buy different ones that were of my interest, and then we had a little hinge, and we'd mount it on the album. And this went on for a number of years, and this is how we met Hal, is through the Stamp Club. And then along come later on, when I had to join the service. I was in the Air Force during Vietnam period, stationed in Guam. And I kind of lost track of all the things that my dad was interested in at the time because I wasn't close to him anymore. But he always would contact me and say what his new interests were. Well, about the time he retired in 1975, he was helping with a lot of the programs that the city had. They were going to build a museum in City Hall. And also, they were starting uh, the River Festival. So these are two things that he was interested in. And he went down and they had a lot of postcards that the city had. And from there, he felt like that's a lot of history and photography of how the town got started and the increase in downtown merchants and all that. Since he was a downtown merchant in the shoe business, he would help out with the business people trying to promote downtown. And after doing this, he got an interest in postcards by sorting through a lot of the cards that the city had been donated to for the library. And in turn, he thought, well, now I'm retired. I need a hobby. I need something to do on the weekends. So he started out going to garage sales, estate sales, and other stores that might have uh, cards. But we always collected cards when we went on vacation. We'd stay at a hotel, or eat at a restaurant. That was their means of advertising their location, and so that people would come back and remember them, because people would keep these cards and review them. And in the olden days, in 1907 or so, people started collecting um, cards through albums. And this is just an example of what he was looking for, was these albums. People would put them on their coffee tables, and this was a conversation that people would do. As you had your friends or relatives come over, they'd look at it and say, "Oh, I remember when you went on vacation and stayed there. I remember I sent you that happy birthday card or that Christmas card." And people would admire them as their beauty because of all the artists and most of these cards were printed over in Germany and England, and some of the famous people that developed these would send them back, put on stores, and they had a whole display of different cards. A lot of them, like in Orr's bookstore, I don't know, a lot of people. I used to work at Orr's, and they would have a display of postal cards as a memory of the people that came to visit the town of Wichita. And right now, my cards that I've selected are a few from my dad's collection of famous artists that have created a lot of these cards. The people would send these cards, the drawings that they done, the artwork, over to Germany and England, and then they would produce these. But a lot of them would color them just the way they wanted to color them, but they always didn't designate the color. But over in Germany and England, they had different robes than the red robes that we think of today for Santa. But the one that I really like is the one that he is in blue color. And you can tell that he's an older Santa, and that he's got his hands uh, close to his beard there, that he is proud of that beard. And also he has a cap that looks close to what a minister of that time, a mission type hat that appears. And it says Merry Christmas. And this is gilded in a kind of a gold color. I don't think it's real gold, but I mean, it's a golden color. And that was their decision to send back a Santa that looked old, and also had some little teddy bears and things that he was going to hand out to the kids. And then also we have one that's a green Santa, and he's looking out for where the children are playing, and he's on his way. He's going to drop all the toys for all the kids and all the come down the chimney, and hopefully you didn't get caught down there. And then they're also on one that has a bicycle that he's riding. So there was many means of transportation that they represented in Santa Claus other than a sleigh. And my wife has some research that she's done on the things that Santa Claus flew on, or rode on, or delivered on, or what. But they're playing with the children, and Santa was always joyful and jolly, paid attention to all the wants of children. And these are the things that my dad always appreciated, was at Christmas time, to make sure that all the kids enjoyed their Christmas morning. Another one we have is at a church area. It shows a church with little angels of children, and he's dressed in a red robe, which is a silk robe. A lot of the cards were super embossed with things, and this represents the silk uh, coat that Santa had. But through the years, uh, things have changed, and my wife wants to talk about the origination of how all this happened. Now, my dad, after my mother passed on, he was 91 years old, and he was having some trouble. So we came up to Wichita and asked him, would you like to come back and live with us? And before he said anything, he said, I'd love to, but I've got all these postcards, and how am I going to get all those postcards to Florida? And I said, well, we'll just run a U-Haul and bring whatever items you want to come down. We have an extra spare bedroom, and we'll set it up as all the things that you'd like to enjoy from the house. And we'll just lock the house up. And if you decide you want to stay with us, then we'll come back and dispose of all the things that are here left in there and sell the house. So Joyce is going to talk a little bit about the history of Santa.
Yeah, before I do that, I want John to show this. Bert and I had a lot of fun after he moved to Florida. I took him to the beach and we did all kinds of fun things. But if you can see this little display he put together, let's see if it's not too. It's all Santa and Christmas cards, and he put all this together because we had a neighbor in Florida that every year his house was decked out to the hilt with beautiful decorations, lights, and everything. And it was done very tastefully. But not only did they have that for people to come by, but he dressed up like Santa, and would sit out in his driveway, and people would come by, and their little children would come up and sit on his lap, and he'd give them candy canes. So they knew that Bert had postcards. Of course, he had to show those anytime he talked about postcards. So they invited him to come and sit with Santa. And he thought that was just great. He got all excited every day at 6 o'clock. He'd get his little display together and go down there and sit, and the boys and girls would come up to Santa, and he was just so pleased that so many of them were interested in seeing his cards, and he'd talk about it to them, and he loved the children that came up. So that was one fun thing that he had, and I was just happy that he was able to enjoy that time. But what I want to tell you about in the Santa story, it began in the 4th century AD in what is now modern day Turkey. A man named Nicholas became the bishop of a village called Myra, and he was later made into a saint, and he became a very popular saint in Christianity. Now, that's all we know for sure, but much of the folklore surrounding Saint Nick, or a myth, speaks of his kindness and generosity toward children. And it was in the Netherlands where we first began to see some semblance of the Santa Claus that we're familiar with today. Unlike the modern depictions of Santa, the Dutch version of Saint Nick, he rode on a donkey and wore a tall bishop's hat. And in the same way kids today leave out a glass of milk and cookies for Santa and his reindeer, the Dutch children would fill their clogs with straw.
And shoes.
Their little wooden shoes with straw, and leave them out for the donkey to eat. And when they woke the next morning, they'd find the straw gone and their shoes were packed with presents. In 1664, that legend of St. Nicholas traveled across the Atlantic Ocean into a Dutch colony of New Amsterdam, which we know today as New York City. There were English settlers there, and not only the Dutch, but the English got on board. They adopted that Dutch celebration of St. Nicholas Day, and they gradually began to combine their own traditions at celebrating Christmas and New Year's. Now, Clement Clark Moore, who was a friend of Washington Irving, and they were both important contributors to the picture that we have today of Santa. Moore sat down one night in 1882 and he was going to write his children a poem. His poem was originally titled A Visit from St. Nicholas. Soon it became known as the classic The Night Before Christmas and was very popular.
Everybody hears that, The Night Before Christmas.
Everybody knows about that. But this poem was printed anonymously in the New York Sentinel on December 23rd, 1823. And the description of Santa as a jolly old elf dressed in red furs who goes down chimneys to give children their gifts was instrumental in laying the foundation for our image of modern Santa Claus. Now, from 1931 to 1964, Coca-Cola advertising showed Santa delivering toys, playing with them, pausing to read a letter and enjoy a Coke, visiting with the children who stayed up to greet him, and they raided the refrigerator at a number of homes. These days, I suppose, Santa could be emailed directly, and they track him online as he flies through the sky. That's a big thing you see on the news every Christmas Eve. NORAD. And I guess it's likely that he and Mrs. Claus run the world's best supply chain, and his elves obviously have Hollywood status, if you've seen any of the movies, the Christmas movies. But this is a little booklet that I'm sure a lot of you had, The Night Before Christmas, and it's got all the real pretty little drawings inside of Santa Claus and, the Clement Moore classic. So Night Before Christmas. So
you can see that the evolution of Santa Claus has changed by the imagination of artists and creating their own image of what they think Santa Claus should look like based on mythology or history of but we all love Santa Claus and what he represents, the freedom of their children to love one another,
to be
happy and joyous, and to look forward to Christmas. Hal mentioned that we've decided to dispose of my father's collection. I've enjoyed collecting cards myself through the years and sorting all this as I inherited his collection. And he would put them in albums as well, but a lot of the ones that he had never used, he had these particular shoe boxes that he would sell shoes in his shoe store. So thinking ahead and sorting all these cards, he said, well, I can go back and get some of these shoe boxes from the store and use those. So he got 100 boxes that he had in the house, all over the place. He had them in every room of his house and full of cards. So you can imagine my idea of why did he collect all these and what should I do with them? So after I started collecting, then I realized how important a hobby is, how important collecting postcards is, and the history and the development through the years of modern cards. And still, you can go and buy a lot of cards for $0.25 a piece. And then as you progress and decide which ones are of interest, you can collect your own items and go through dealers. And of course, times have changed now. You can go on the internet and search for hundreds and hundreds of cards and order them and buy them through this way. But I feel like they're losing the problem of
The personal
personal problem, connection with other collectors. That's why I think the Wichita Postcard Club has grown and increased over all these years. I'm not too sure how many thousand people have been a member of the Wichita Postcard Club, but it's an international club now. And people come and set up from all over the world. We've had people from France and all over the United States. This is how they make a living. They travel, set up all their wares, and move from city to city at all the conventions. And Wichita has been recognized as one of the best shows in our country. And that's why a lot of dealers always want to attend this. And there's a waiting list to try and come to this show. And there'll be a lot of activity from all these people that come. And they're all looking for something. That's the part of the fun of collecting is I want to complete a set, or I want to look around to see what else is available that I might be wanting to collect. And Hal has had programs through the years of other collectors specializing in certain fields. And there's a total thousand, there's probably 3,000 or 4,000 Santa Clauses that a person can collect from different dealers. The ones that I like are ones from artists that designed all these. John Lynch is the publisher, and the Tuck cards from England and Whitman made cards are all the ones that I think are the most desirable. They were well designed and highly collectible. So some of these I do have that I'm willing to let go of because I want to share my collection with other collectors, and hopefully they'll find something of interest. And we're looking forward to coming to the show. Got our bags packed. So see you soon. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you both. Go ahead, Joyce.
Come and find some Christmas postcards. You never know. It might be the one you've been looking for. And John will make you a good deal.
That's not all. I mean, it's a wide selection of all types of topics. So,
yeah, we don't just have Christmas cards. We're going to have all kinds of stuff.
We can see behind you these binders full of cards, different topics. They've pulled out the Santa Claus one or Christmas binder on that top shelf.
yeah.
So that's how they sell them, and you can look at them and enjoy and shop and compare and everything. That's the joy of a postcard show.
See, here's Kansas
street views. Right.
We have a variety.
Well, thank you both for being here today and letting people get to know you a little bit and about your incredible parents, Bert and Bessie Jones. But come to the show and meet them in person, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the show on the 21st and 22nd of October this year, 2023.
We're looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.